In this video, we will be exploring some of the more plausible theories that are being discussed on what might have happened to Jared Shadid. I will just say now, since the previous video, there have been no further official updates from the police themselves. However, I have spoken directly with one of Jared's good friends who has given me a bit more knowledge on the case. I was also informed that there were a few facts discussed in the first Jared Shadid video which the news sources got incorrect, so I will also use this as an opportunity to set the record straight. Anyway, based on all of this information as well as what we already know, I think it would be useful to continue theorizing what could have caused Jared's strange disappearance over 2 months ago, in the hopes we can get to the bottom of this mystery. But just before we get into the theories themselves, I will just quickly recap what we know so far about this case. So, Jared was a 27-year-old lawyer from Maryland who had recently decided to travel across the country, eventually ending up in Seattle, Washington, where he planned to stay in an Airbnb located in the neighborhood of Capitol Hill. Jared was spotted on CCTV moving his belongings into the building on July 30th, but after finishing the job, for whatever reason, he didn't enter the property, and instead disappeared, remaining a missing person to this day. We know from the Airbnb owner that Jared left all of his electronics in the home, including his phone, laptops, and entire digital footprint, meaning there was no way for the police to trace his whereabouts. In my previous video, I mentioned that his car was discovered 2 weeks later in Los Angeles. However, further evidence actually shows that the car had been parked there since July 31st, the day after his disappearance. So for now, all we know is that somebody drove Jared's car back to LA. Another important piece of evidence to note is that Jared had been staying at numerous places in California before he drove up to Seattle, so he may have had his own reasons to return. But after 2 months of investigation, the LAPD are still no closer to finding out the truth, and so we need to continue raising awareness about this case if we ever hope to find Jared and bring him home. So with that, let's get into the theories. So a popular theory which has been making its way around the internet is that Jared could have been forced to drive to LA by somebody else. The theory goes, as Jared was moving his belongings into the property, he parks his car up in an efficient position to make it easier to walk back and forth between the car and the Airbnb. He likely has his car unlocked to allow for easier access to the boxes, but somebody walking by notices what Jared is doing and starts plotting a scheme. Perhaps the trunk is left open, or maybe the car doors are just unlocked. But either way, while Jared is walking away from the car, a potential suspect then takes the opportunity to climb inside. It's possible this person was simply looking to steal the car, but after noticing that the keys were not in the ignition, he waits for Jared to return. Once Jared comes back to move his car into the designated parking spot, he climbs in, sits down, and then buckles his seatbelt. But when he looks up at the rearview mirror, he notices a person in the back seat who is aiming a weapon directly towards him. The suspect then orders Jared to drive, threatening him along the way, and with Jared not wanting to make the situation worse, he gives in to the demands, hoping he will be spared once they get to the desired destination. However, once they arrive in LA, the suspect then decides he doesn't want to leave any witnesses. Maybe Jared mentions how he is a lawyer at some point as a means of scaring the suspect, or perhaps they just don't want to take any chances. But feeling as if they have no other options, the suspect then takes Jared's life and hides his body somewhere in California. At this point, anything is possible really, but without any further evidence from the LAPD, we can only speculate. Now, the reason I believe this theory has a lot of weight to it is the fact that Jared left all of his belongings in the Airbnb, including his phone. I can't think of a single plausible reason why he would ever get into his car without his phone, especially as he was in a new location with no prior knowledge of his surroundings. But on the other hand, if this wasn't the case, why would he suddenly decide to drive off to LA at random? Why wouldn't he just quickly return and grab his phone first? So, with this in mind, there are only two options really. Either he was forced to drive the car to LA, or he had a sudden mental breakdown, causing him to make an impulsive decision. Which leads into our next theory, which was actually posed by one of Jared's closest friends. Apparently, the 27-year-old lawyer had not been acting himself lately, and his behaviour did not seem to match the Jared everyone knew. A point I failed to bring attention to in my previous video was the clear change in Jared's appearance. The man we see in the CCTV footage is almost unrecognisable, which to me presents the possibility that he was struggling somewhat with his mental health at the time. It's also possible, given the fact that LA and Seattle have been struggling with a substance problem for a while now, that Jared might have gotten wrapped up in substance abuse himself. This may explain his strange decision making in the days after his disappearance. But saying this, he has been missing for over 2 months now, so if he did drive down to California himself, surely somebody would have spotted him in LA in all of that time. Nevertheless, there have been no possible suspects named at this time, so based on the evidence available, it is certainly plausible that Jared caused this disappearance himself. But in order to uncover the truth, we first need to find Jared, which means ramping up the investigation and hiring private investigators to track his whereabouts. The fact is, if Jared is still out there somewhere, he is likely in danger, so every day we do not find him is another day he may become a victim to somebody on the street. So it's imperative we do everything we can to bring this mystery to a close. I also wanted to speak on my own personal theory, which I explained in the Yohanes Kidane analysis video. If you haven't seen this one yet, I'll leave a link in the description below. But basically, the theory discusses a potential serial killer who could be on the loose in the West Coast, preying on young professional African American men. Now, of course, it is very possible that Jared Shadid could just be an unrelated coincidence. However, with his disappearance lasting over 2 months now, I think it's very possible he could be another potential victim. The fact is, there have been countless examples of similar cases to Jared's over the last few months, which has raised serious concerns, including Raylon Bivins from Seattle and Yohanes Kidane from San Francisco. Despite what the police say, I think we can all agree that these cases are still very much shrouded in mystery. So perhaps the answer for Jared's disappearance lies with a potential West Coast serial killer. Now, just before I wrap up the video, I wanted to reel off a few other theories which have been proposed in the comments. So firstly, I saw a few people discussing the possibility of Jared falling victim to one of his previous clients as a lawyer. Perhaps he lost a case and the client chased him all the way across the country to exact their revenge. In my opinion, this is quite far-fetched, however there have certainly been cases where this has happened to other lawyers, but the idea of somebody following him all the way from Maryland to Seattle seems extremely unlikely to me. Another theory mentioned was that he could be living on the streets of Seattle after selling his car for money. There is no evidence for this, however, with Jared acting strange before his disappearance, it's possible he needed money to fund an addiction or even just his travel plans. But I don't personally believe there is any weight to this theory either, as this wouldn't explain why Jared would have left his phone at the Airbnb. One last theory I will quickly mention is that Jared may have simply decided to start a new life in California. Likely brought on by a mental breakdown or substance addiction, Jared could have decided to leave all of his belongings behind and live on the streets of LA. It certainly wouldn't be the first time a homeless substance abuser confessed to throwing their life away for their addiction. But in my opinion, this is a very sensitive theory with no hard evidence to prove it, so I wouldn't like to lean into it too much at this time. Perhaps once we have some actual evidence proving that Jared was using at the time of his disappearance, the LAPD can focus their attention on this theory. But once again, until we have more information, we can only speculate for now. So please leave your own personal theories in the comments and let's see if we can solve this mystery together. I know how hard Jared's family and friends have been working to find him, but one of the key issues here is funding the private investigators, which is why a portion of the revenue from this video will be going towards the search. The PI fees usually start from around $250 an hour, so if you would like to personally contribute to the search for Jared Shadid, please visit the GoFundMe page and donate whatever you can. I will include the link in the description below. But with that, I think I'll leave this video here. So thank you for watching and make sure to subscribe for further updates. Also, if you would like more details on the case, please feel free to check out my previous videos on screen now.